Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Head wounds, heavy bleeding, and then just shrapnel all over. So folks are bleeding from their abdomen, bleeding from arms, bleeding from legs. Secretary Hegseth, do you know who said that?
I'm not sure I do.
It was one of our soldiers describing the devastating Iranian drone strike at Port Shuaibah, March 1st in Kuwait. As you know, 6 of our soldiers killed, over 30 wounded. Secretary, do you know the range of the Shahed 136 one-way attack drone, approximately?
It depends on the variant, but it's got serious distance.
Several hundred miles. Do you know how far Port Shuaibah is from Iran?
There's a reason why we took
It's
extreme measures
I'm
of force protection, because we understood the proximity challenges.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to reclaim my time. It's well under 100 miles. Before the war started, there was clear intelligence that Shuaibah was high on Iran's target list. Internal analysis had said the site was indefensible from aerial attack and should not be used. Yet you sent our soldiers from the 103rd Sustainment Command there anyway. Is that true or false? True or false? Straightforward question.
Are you going to give me a chance to answer or just play gotcha?
Did you send them there or not?
We took proactive measures from the beginning
yes
to ensure force protection and defensive posture were maximized across the theater.
Let's talk about what defenses they had. Prior to the attack, officers on the ground knew our troops were vulnerable. In fact, they requested additional force protection. Did they receive it?
Wherever humanly possible, force protection and counter UAS was always made available.
They did not. In fact, when asked to describe the base's defense, one survivor who's come forward from the unit said, quote, I would put it in the none category. From a drone defense capability, none. So let's be clear, no counter-drone capabilities, no counter-rocket systems, no counter-mortar or counter-artillery, not even the basic overhead protection that you and I had 20 years ago in Iraq, and now 6 of our soldiers are dead. The next day, you downplayed the attack. You said it was a squirter that squeaked through fortified defenses. But since then, thankfully, brave survivors have come forward to set the record straight. One of our surviving soldiers told CBS, quote, painting a picture that one squeaked through is a falsehood. Another said the unit was, quote, unprepared to provide any defense for itself. It was not a fortified position. Another survivor said the building's protection was about as weak as one gets. Secretary Hegseth, that is obviously in direct contradiction to what you said from the Pentagon podium the next day. So are you saying that these soldiers, our soldiers who survived this horrific attack, are lying?
What I'm saying is, before the commencement of the conflict, we put in maximum defensive posture we could.
That's a direct contradiction.
We moved 70
what they said,
in this directing. Can I speak, or are you just going to monologue falsehoods all over the place?
It's not a falsehood.
We moved 7,500 troops off of the X based on the intel.
Stop.
Based on the intel.
Stop. Reclaiming my time.
Because you yell doesn't make you right. Just because you yell doesn't make you right.
I'm reclaiming my time on behalf of these survivors. You just said what they said is a falsehood.
There's a much larger picture.
True?
There's a much larger picture at play here that included integrated air defenses, bunkers, moving people off the
why,
X
Mr.
to
Secretary,
ensure that they were
dead?
not part of the target. We moved those troops and all across the theater, thousands of troops off the X, off of their bases, because we knew what Iran was going to try to strike, and we knew there could be a tragic moment. There could be a tragic moment where something could get through. Of course, that's the consequence of conflict, and we remember those 6 every single day.
I want to finish.
But don't play games with.
I'm not playing games. I want to finish with one more quote from a survivor of the attack, and I put this on the record. Telling the truth is important, and we're not going to learn from these mistakes if we pretend these mistakes didn't happen. Secretary Hegseth, those soldiers told the truth. Those soldiers are braver than you are.
I commend them.
They are asking for accountability. They deserve accountability, and I'm asking for the same, starting with you. And as I said a year ago, you need to resign immediately.
I commend those soldiers.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas. Gentleman's time's expired.
Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Keating.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk briefly about the current U.S. doctrine and conduct of the administration in a particular event and a series of events, actually. As everybody in the dais and the witness table is aware, the Department of Defense Law of War Manual specifies that any order to kill shipwrecked persons in an illegal order would constitute a war crime. It isn't suggested there's a specific example to show a clear-cut example of what this entails in our own manual. With that in mind, let's look back a few weeks ago when a fishing crew ended a long day of hard fishing, scoring a full stock of albacore and swordfish on board. Without any warning or expectation, this small Ecuadorian fishing vessel, operating about 200 nautical miles off the Galapagos Islands, was militarily engaged by U.S. forces. It was hit once, then it was hit again. Not a warning shot, not an interdiction, 2 drone strikes. Survivors described chaos and severe injuries. Our U.S. forces then handcuffed the crew at gunpoint, placed black hoods over their heads, seized and scrubbed their devices, and then held them for days. Ultimately, the crew was released, given there was no evidence to support any narco activity or any charges that may be against them. So to recap, we struck a vessel, we struck it again, set fire to it as it was sinking, and as public reports say, even drank their beer. We detained the survivors, and then we let them go. This should be eye-opening. Now let's go to another example, the double tap or 2-strike attack that took place on September 2nd in the Caribbean. A vessel was struck, disabled, and then struck again, killing all but 2 survivors that were left clinging to the wreckage. And this is the thing. We know this happened. We know how it happened. And the Defense Department still refuses to release the follow-up video of the killing of the shipwrecked survivors, even though they released the initial one to the public in major news networks worldwide. No difference in sources and methods in the 2 videos, but still not released to the public. Of course, the backlash was severe at the time and perhaps is being forgotten. An unpredictable but ignoble display of character from this administration. Fingers were pointed at one another as everyone scurried to cover, in a tacit acknowledgement that this was an issue potentially violating international law. Now I've reviewed what's been available, the phony rationale that these attacks are about fentanyl trafficking, when we know fentanyl comes from China, India, through Mexico. Then the baseless argument that this was about narco-terrorism. You know, I don't believe a word of it. This was to create leverage for regime change in Venezuela. And now the president acknowledged that was about oil. Beyond the simple need for justice and exercising American values, it's important for us to discuss what the U.S. belligerence in the world stage means to our security, our ability to marshal cooperation with our allies, and most importantly, not to normalize these actions that could endanger the lives of our own service members put in similar peril. Let me be clear about one thing. Whether it's these particular strikes discussed here, the one that killed 11 others off the coast of Venezuela, whether it's the 178 other killings, with each of these extrajudicial killings, the administration is pirating American values. We'll continue to investigate this. We will. It'll come forward in the future. Some days that second video will be released. But we've got to stop also using our precious resources that are being taxed so heavily all over the world on actions that hurt our military. They hurt our military and they hurt our standing internationally, and they're hurting our standard here at home. I hope that we can move forward. I hope we can review whether these are justified, because I found no justification. We were given classified information on the second strike. I can't discuss it, but I must tell you, it's the most convoluted bullshit I ever heard in my life. This should be public. This is our honor. This is what it makes American a difference maker. This is what we're
It's an incredible array of false accusations.
And I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Dr. Jackson.
In terms of the munitions we used and what we paid for it. But when you add to that the damage that was done to our bases and today's dollars for buying replacement munitions and replacement aircrafts, what has the total cost been over the last 60 days?
That number right now reflects the total cost that we're seeing.
Including buying in today's dollars the new weapons and replacements, and including the damage there? That's your testimony?
If there's adjustments to that, I would defer to the comptroller on that.
And how much are you seeing in terms of, are you asking in terms of supplemental funding just for the Iran mission from this committee?
If and when a supplemental is submitted, the majority of it would not just be for,
what would be the ballpark for Iran?
Munitions related to the entirety of what we want to get done.
A number, what would you submit?
It would be on Iran, it would be less than $25 billion, but there's a lot more we would ask for beyond just Iran.
You're saying it's $25 billion. Okay, I would just, if you come back, you want to revise those numbers, because all the experts are disagreeing with you when it comes to today's dollars and damage, but you can revise it. How much did it cost American taxpayers in terms of the strike to the Iranian school where kids were killed? Do you have that number in terms of the missiles we used?
As I've said, that unfortunate situation remains under investigation.
You don't know how much it costs the taxpayer?
But I wouldn't tie a cost to that, to anything.
It's a reasonable question, no, sir? I mean, our taxpayer money was going there. Do you know how much it will cost Americans in terms of their increased cost in gas and food over the next year because of the Iran war?
I would simply ask you what the cost is of an Iranian nuclear bomb.
I'm going to give you that opportunity.
I would simply ask you what the... you're playing gotcha questions about domestic things. I'm not...
You're saying it's a gotcha question to ask what it's going to be in terms of the increased cost of gas.
Why won't you answer what it costs to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb?
I give you that, sir, but let me...
What would it cost? What would you pay to ensure Iran doesn't get a nuclear bomb? What would you pay?
I reclaim my time. Do you not know? You had no one do the analysis of what the increased cost of gas and food on the American people are going to be?
What is the cost of Iran holding that straight at issue with nuclear weapons?
It's $631 billion, which means it's an increase of $5,000 a year for American households. Now, let me give you this point. You're saying that your operation is preventing a nuclear Iran. Will you acknowledge that there is an economic cost to the American people for doing what you believe is necessary to make Iran denuclear? Will you acknowledge the economic cost?
We have an incredible economic team that's managing this better than what the previous administration did to our economy, what the previous administration did with inflation, what the previous administration did with COVID, and you're going to lecture this administration about the economy?
You know what is upsetting?
Incredible.
You didn't even do the analysis on how much it's costing the American people. It's one thing if you said, okay, it costs the American people $5,000, but we think it's worth it. That's what we've done in World War II and other wars. Here's what it costs. You got to pay for it. You don't even know what the average American is paying. You don't know what we paid in terms of the missiles that hit the Iranian school. You don't know what we're paying in terms of gas. You don't know what we're paying in terms of food. Your $25 billion number is totally off. It's the incompetence. It's the incompetence. Let me ask you this. Certainly, maybe here we'll find agreement. There were still 440 pounds of low-enriched uranium, correct, when President Obama, after the JCPOA? Is that accurate?
The amounts and types are classified.
Okay. Will you acknowledge that there were 970 pounds of uranium enriched after Trump tore up the JCPOA?
The JCPOA was a terrible deal that allowed Iran a path to a nuclear bomb.
You deal with vague platitudes. I'm asking you about numbers. Like, you don't know what gas costs. You don't know what food costs. You don't know what the operation costs. You know, I get sound bites, but how about numbers? Do you know how much the enriched uranium was after you ripped up the JCPOA? Trump did.
I'll give you a number. I know that, as was stated by early on, the price of gas is twice as expensive in California, your home state, as anywhere else in the country because of the horrible policies your state pursued.
You know what? It used to be that type of stuff worked, and then you started to lose the people that you campaigned you wanted to be for, because you said you wouldn't get us into bad wars. You said you would bring down the prices. You know what I'm sad for? I'm sad for all the people who voted for Trump. I'm sad for them because you betrayed them. You've betrayed a lot of that MAGA base. And you know who knows that? J.D. Vance knows that.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon.
Now recognizes Mr. Whitesides from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Secretary Hegseth, General Kane, Mr. Hurst, thank you for testifying today and for your service to the nation. Over the past few weeks, military and civilian leaders of many of the DoD components have testified about their FY27 posture. We appreciate their professionalism and their service to the country and the time that they've spent to testify before us. I want to start with Mr. Hurst. Mr. Hurst, you testified at the beginning of this that you said that the estimated cost of the war is about $25 billion. In March, you stated that the first week of the war cost $11 billion. So is it right to say that the following 7 weeks have cost about $14 million total, or $2 billion per week?
Yeah, the most intense phase of the conflict was obviously the beginning. That's when most munitions were used.
Okay.
And that's the base expense from the war.
Right. So that you also said just now that the $25 billion includes the cost of the munitions deployed. Is that right? This question is for the CFO, sir. Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. So I guess I'm confused then. It makes sense that if that's the cost, then the cost to refill those stocks would be no more than $25 billion. Am I right about that?
When we estimate cost of the conflict, we're using current replacement cost for these weapon systems.
Right. You're using current replacement cost. So it's frankly pretty surprising that the estimate for the supplemental would be $200 billion. You don't, if you'd like to explain that, you can, but.
Well, that's not accurate. We don't have an estimate for the cost.
Okay, that's what's publicly reported. So it's good to hear that it's going to be less. Mr. Hurst, do you have Signal on your phone?
I'm sorry, why is this relevant?
Do you have Signal on your phone?
What does this have to do with the budget?
I'm going to take that as a yes. Mr. Kane, sorry, General Kane, do you have Signal on your phone?
I do, sir, yes.
Okay. So I want to talk about Signal. Last year, the Secretary and other administration officials discussed sensitive and almost certainly classified information about a strike in Yemen using the unclassified Signal app. Mr. Hurst, what's the current policy for Signal on official DoD devices?
I'm the comptroller. I don't do CIO work.
So therefore, it is allowed? Is that your statement, that it is now allowed to have Signal on your device?
Mr. Whiteside, my statement is I run the budget for DoD.
Yeah. Okay, well, he's got it on his phone, so therefore it must be permitted.
Sir, I got to go back and look if it's on my official phone. I was talking about my personal phone. I'm not exactly sure. I'll go back and look, though.
Okay. Last month, FBI Director Kash Patel made a public announcement that Russian hackers are targeting Signal app users in the government, specifically stated that they were targeting individuals of high intelligence value, including current and former U.S. government officials. I hope that it is not official policy that you can have Signal on your official phones, and I would love to get a response from the department on that. We have now asked this question about 5 separate times and have never gotten a straight answer. I want to close by talking about helicopters. Mr. Secretary, I want to ask about the Army Apache helicopter that flew over Kid Rock's property on March 28th. An investigation was launched by the 101st Combat Aviation Brigade Command Leadership, but before that review is completed on March 31st, you terminated it via social media post. Did you personally direct termination of that review?
I did.
Okay. Now, the president said they probably shouldn't have been doing it and that I'd take a look at it. So did you talk to the president before terminating that review?
Well, I don't relay what I talk about with the president.
I think unfortunately that means that you did talk to him, which in turn means that you've just confirmed that the president himself overruled the leadership of the 101st Airborne. Mr. Secretary, you yourself have affirmed repeatedly the need for higher standards and higher accountability at every level of your agency. Commanders rely on established processes to uphold these standards. How does canceling a command-initiated review by the 101st Airborne leadership support a culture of accountability? Actually, I think I'll ask that of the chairman.
Sir, back to my earlier comments about the importance in my role of staying in the middle. What you're alluding to is, in my assessment, with deep respect for your ask, is a partisan question, and I think it would be inappropriate for me to answer that.
Sir, I actually don't think it is. I think it is actually a very fundamental principle of accountability in our department, and I think it was the wrong decision. I'm going to close by just saying one thing. Mr. Secretary, you started this hearing by politicizing it, and I want to make one point. Poll after poll shows that the American public does not support this war, and support is dropping every day. We are all representing our constituents, our constituents, which is our constitutional duty. And to state that we are politicizing it is an affront to Congress and every member in this House, and I yield back.
You are politicizing it, Congressman.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair now.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I want to go in a little bit different direction. Timothy Parlatore served as your private attorney, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Parlatore also served as private attorney for President Trump's campaign, correct?
I'm not privy to every professional position that he's held.
Well, I'll help you out. He did. And you appointed Mr. Parlatore as your senior advisor, correct?
He does reserve duty on behalf of the Navy.
His title is senior as an advisor. You gave him that title, correct?
And I would count him as very much an advisor of mine.
Yep. He travels with you, correct?
Tim Parlatore has been a long-term friend. He's a great patriot.
He travels with you. That's not what I asked. I reclaim my time. He travels with you, doesn't he? He travels with you, doesn't he? Correct? There's public Instagram that shows this. Just say yes.
Yes, of course.
Okay. He sits in meetings with you and advises you, doesn't he?
He sits in some meetings on occasion.
Yeah, well, he maintains a desk in an office in the Pentagon, does he not?
I'd have to check.
You don't know?
It's a big Pentagon.
You directly commissioned Mr. Parlatore in the Naval Reserve as a Navy commander in March 2025, did you not?
I was very proud to do so.
And when you did, because he's a Navy Reserve officer, he didn't have to go through the PPO process, the White House Presidential Personnel Office, right? He wasn't vetted by a White House PPO.
Uniformed service members don't get vetted by.
The answer is yes. He didn't have to be vetted by a White House PPO. He didn't go through the Senate confirmation process either, did he? The answer is no.
I don't know what you're getting to, but Tim is a fantastic.
I'll tell you what I'm getting to. The answer is no, right?
He does great work.
Okay. He didn't maintain a security clearance when you appointed him as special advisor. Is that right?
I'd have to check.
You don't know?
I mean, anybody that has access to sensitive material is going to have the appropriate clearance.
Okay, so when you appointed him as special advisor, he had a security clearance?
You're trying to piece together a timeline.
No, I'm asking a simple question. One of your special, most sensitive advisors, did he have a security clearance?
No, you're playing a gotcha game like you do on TV and everywhere else. You're trying to thread together details that are connected about something else.
Clearly, you're concerned about my line of questioning, aren't you, Mr. Secretary? Because you know where it's going, don't you? I think you do. So, does Mr. Parlatore represent foreign governments? He has a private law practice, does he not?
From what I understand of his law practice, he does a lot of great work for service members in the military and other.
He maintains a private law practice. Does he represent foreign governments or foreign persons in that private law practice?
I don't know.
You don't know. Somebody who's sitting in your meetings, a special advisor, you don't know. Does he represent any senior officers who are currently under consideration for promotion by you or your office?
The only person that makes determinations about senior officers is me.
Answer the question. Does he represent senior officers who are under consideration for promotion by you?
No, I'm the one that makes decisions about choosing.
Does he represent them, Mr. Secretary? Does he represent them?
He doesn't represent anyone. He's a legal advisor and always has been.
But he has clients, does he not?
He's a legal advisor to me on reserve duty, and he always has been, and he does a fantastic job.
Is it true that Mr. Parlatore was removed? I reclaim my time. Is it true that Mr. Parlatore was removed from an investigation by the White House last year?
I don't know what you're referring to, but not that I'm aware of.
You're not aware of it? Was it true that you were also removed from that same investigation? The answer is yes.
No, not that I'm aware of.
You're not aware of it. That's interesting. Well, is it true that Mr. Parlatore disparaged President Trump?
I don't know what you're referring to, but no.
Is it true that...
Going nowhere.
Well, it's going somewhere, which is why you're not answering the question. Was it true that he was accused of lying by the president's legal team?
I'm not familiar to... You'd have to give me the context.
Well, it's right here. You want to look at the statement from President Trump's legal team?
Anybody could blow up a quote and claim it says something, and that's what you're doing in a little stunt.
Secretary Hegseth, what I'm really concerned about is you purport to have unfaltering loyalty to President Trump, and yet you are continuously going.
You care a lot about President Trump, don't you?
You are going behind his back.
Waste of your 5 minutes.
Appointing
a
people.
Huge waste of your 5 minutes that led nowhere.
I reclaim my time. You are repeatedly going behind the president's back.
Gentleman from Colorado's time. Go ahead, Mr. Carl.
You are repeatedly going behind President Trump's back, appointing people who he has accused of lying, who the White House has accused of lying.
Gentleman's time's expired.
And you are not being honest with President
gentlelady
Trump.
from South Carolina, Ms. Mace.
Play it out for us. How does that happen? How does it actually lead to that result?
Well, I would take issue with the premise of the question that nothing was done. Operation Midnight Hammer was a very effective.
Well, I didn't say nothing was done. I said in this war.
Ultimately,
this war started.
Well, this under this administration, unlike other administrations, which cut bad deals and pallets of cash with no ability to oversee whether Iran is actually pursuing a nuclear program.
Which is where we're at.
We want to litigate JCPOA or the Iran deal. Our view, the president's view, is that was a very bad deal that gave them a bunch of money up front.
What's the future?
To fund, you talked about negotiated deals. Allowed them to fund their proxies and spread Hamas and Hezbollah all around the region, build up nuclear capabilities.
What are we going to do now?
President Trump has been clear-eyed, from the killing of Qasem Soleimani to the pulling out of the Iran deal to Midnight Hammer and now to this effort to recognize that you have to stare down this kind of enemy who's hell-bent on getting a nuclear weapon and get them to a point where they're at the table giving it up in a way that
they
never have it.
So they haven't broken yet. Okay, we haven't gotten there yet for all of the.
Well, their nuclear facilities have been obliterated. Underground, they're buried, and we're watching them 24/7. So we know where any nuclear material
reclaiming
might be.
my time for
we're
just
watching
a quick second here. We had to start this war, you just said, 60 days ago, because the nuclear weapon was an imminent threat. Now you're saying that it was completely obliterated?
They had not given up their nuclear ambitions, and they had a conventional shield of thousands of missiles.
So Operation Midnight Hammer accomplished nothing of substance. It left us at exactly the same place we were before. So much so that
their facilities were bombed and obliterated. Their ambitions continued, and they're building a conventional shield.
Let me try again.
It's the North Korea strategy. You know this very well. The North Korea strategy was use conventional missiles to prevent anybody from challenging them so they could slow walk their way to a weapon. President Trump saw Iran at its weakest moment, took an action to ensure, in a way that only the United States of America could do with our Israeli partners,
and yet
to ensure their
conventional
shield was brought
one
to
other
deal,
question,
which we've done.
if I could get to it. So on Ukraine, a year plus ago, your advice, the president's advice, was Ukraine had no cards to play. They should go cut the best possible deal they could. Clearly that was wrong. What did you miss? What did you miss about the conflict between Russia and Ukraine that you didn't see that Ukraine was going to be capable of doing what they've done in the last 14 months?
What we didn't miss, and we're here in this committee, is that Joe Biden, with no accountability, gave hundreds of billions of dollars of our weapons to Ukraine, to an outcome that never would have happened if President Trump was president. So he pulled out you guys don't talk about that. Ultimately, President Trump believes there should be a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine.
But you didn't expect Ukraine to be where they're at right now. I'm asking you, just from a strategic standpoint, what
I think the Ukrainians have shown great courage, and I appreciate that Europe is now paying for any weapons that we provide.
All right, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes a gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you and I agree that Iran is a national security threat to us and our allies. Now, earlier you called us feckless for questioning your war. Do you think Congress was smart or feckless when it failed to ask tough questions of the Bush administration and gave them a blank check for Iraq?
Well, if you're trying to compare this war to the Iraq
I'm just asking
war,
you, do you think it was smart or feckless?
The first one to call a stupid war, then it's a false comparison.
Okay, well, probably a good idea to ask tough questions. So let me just ask you a few questions. Did you advise the president that we should attack Iran?
We were, first of all, in this position in the cabinet, we never talk about what we would advise the president to do or not.
Do you think the president or you deserve more?
I've been in every meeting.
I understand
with
that,
the chairman
Mr.
and everybody else as those
Secretary, I'm asking the
were made, and he got every perspective possible when it came.
I'm just asking what your perspective is. Are you afraid to take ownership of this? Do you think it was a good idea or not?
As I've consulted the president, do I think it's a good idea to confront a nuclear bomb
in
the hands of the? Imagine what the world would look like right now if Iran had a nuclear weapon.
Okay, so let's just
imagine.
Which, by the way,
if they had one,
every
which the
previous
Obama deal was going to allow them,
including the first Trump administration,
they had one,
prevented them from having a nuclear weapon. So, listen, how is this war going? Do you think we're winning?
Militarily on the battlefield, it's been an astounding military success.
No, but are we winning the war?
Absolutely.
Okay, so do you call Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz winning?
Well, I would say the blockade that we hold that doesn't allow anything to come in or out of Iranian ports.
Okay, so
always
we've blockaded their blockade. So they blockaded us, and then we blockaded their blockade. That's like saying, tag, you're it. Or, you know, if President Madison had said, well, the British just burned down Washington, but don't worry, we're going to burn it down as well. Chairman Kaine, did the military have plans for the idea that Iran might blockade the Strait?
Sir, thanks for the question. I'll answer it this way. You know, in this job, I have to maintain trust with a variety of constituents.
Okay, I'm just asking if the military
yes,
had
sir.
plans.
As always, my point in this is, as I explain the role, my point in this is we always offer a full range of military options that are carefully considered with the associated risks with those options and the considerations therein.
So, Mr. Secretary, did you consider this risk?
Of course, this department has looked at all aspects of this risk. And
so then why did you
send
the minesweepers, the only minesweepers we had in the Gulf, to Singapore weeks before the war started?
We have lots of capabilities that you may or may not be aware of at the classified level.
Okay, and
to deal with
by the way, would the Trump-class battleships have helped with this?
You're talking about a prospective future battleship, which we welcome in the fleet.
Okay, so you're supportive of the battleships?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How much has Iran profited from your administration lifting the sanctions on Iran when you started this war?
I can tell you Iran is financially devastated right now.
Okay, well,
in conjunction with the Treasury
earned about $14 billion.
Operation Economic Fury. They're at a point where between the blockade and what we've done to them militarily, remember, they don't have a Navy. They can't contest the blockade.
Okay.
Between what we've done to them militarily
and
financially, they're at a place
$14 billion?
They have very few options.
How many Chinese missiles can they buy for $14 billion? Does that sound like winning?
They're not. We're ensuring, and they're not buying Chinese missiles.
Okay. You know, at the end of the day, this also has a cost to us. If let's say this war costs $100 billion, I mean, you've already said, give us more time. It's only been 2 months. It could go on for 20 years like Iraq and Afghanistan. Let's just say it costs $100 billion. What is that to the average American taxpayer? Do you have any idea?
Well, unlike foolish previous administrations, it won't go on.
No, I'm just asking
for years and decades.
But let's just say
sitting
it's
in this position, it's hard to imagine how
you know that?
we've allowed those things to happen. You were a part of that
the
war.
Answer to that?
So was I. And I never.
I'm just asking if you know what your war costs the average American taxpayer.
What is the cost of Iran having a nuclear weapon that they wield?
I'm just asking if you know the cost of the average American taxpayer.
I'm asking you what the cost
would
be of that.
So for the American taxpayers out there, my constituents, some of the constituents you wanted to represent in Minnesota, I'm just wondering if they have an extra $600 lying around to pay for your war. I think that's just a question that we ought to ask. Now, quickly, on March 13th in a press conference, you said we will give them no quarter, no mercy. In order for no quarter or no survivors is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. You understand that's murder. Do you stand by that statement?
The Department of War fights to win, and we ensure that our warfighters have the rules of engagement necessary to be as effective as humanly possible.
Okay, so just to be clear, you called Democratic members of Congress to be tried for sedition for reminding our troops to follow the law. But when you tell them to commit a war crime, you stand by yourself.
For insinuating that the laws that we're giving them are unlawful.
Time's expired. Chair now
the continued lengthy deployment of ships, equipment, and personnel has sacrificed readiness. We know what we have lost, but what have we gained? Let's consider that the regime in Tehran is still intact, with new and more radical leadership, as are Iran's ballistic missile and drone forces, as is Iran's ability to rebuild their military industries. Also, as is Iran's coordination with China, Russia, and North Korea, and Iran's ability to choke off global energy supplies, and their stockpile of highly enriched uranium, which they only built after President Trump shredded President Obama's Iran deal in 2017. Secretary Hegseth, you have been lying to the American public about this war from day one, and so has the President. You have misled the public about why we are at war. You and the President have offered ever-changing reasons for this war. You've misled the public about the progress of the war. While the military has executed this war with tactical success, the strategy has been an astounding incompetence, doing immense economic damage to America.
Mr. Chairman,
and the
Mr.
world.
Chairman, with the personal attack on the Secretary, he should have an opportunity to respond.
He certainly will.
No, at the time you're doing it.
It's the gentleman's time. He can use it as he sees fit and add an extra 5 seconds to Mr. Garamendi's time.
Thank you. You and the President are ever-changing reasons for the war. You have misled the public about the progress of the war. While the military has executed this war with tactical success, the strategy has been an outstanding example of incompetence. This war of choice is a political and economic disaster at every level. Despite the President's promise to lower the cost of living, gas prices are up 40% and inflation is soaring so much for lowering the cost of living. The President has got himself and America stuck in the quagmire of another war in the Middle East. He's desperately trying to extricate himself from his own mistakes. It is in America's and indeed the world's interest that he succeed in that. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman.
Telling to me that you decided to use your words and your time for that. It turns out that Democrats, even Democrats in Congress, are patriots as well. We serve in our uniformed services, we admire and love our uniformed services, and we love our country just as much as Republicans do. In fact, in this body, I and Representative Bacon, who you just spoke to, led the junior enlisted pay raises that you now sit there and laud as and take credit for. We led the closing of the BAH, which then you ended up poaching and using for other things. This body led and authorized Ukrainian funding that is now being withheld. You also, in your opening remarks, strangely admonished us here for not being patient with the results of your 2-month war, a war of your suggestion to this president, a war of your choice, a war you executed without congressional consultation. And so it shouldn't be shocking, sir, Mr. Secretary, that we have questions. Indeed, it's constitutionally our right to do so. So to be clear, despite a brilliant performance by our men and women in uniform, despite thousands of tactical successes, Iran still has nuclear material, still has air defenses, still has small boats, and still has the Strait. So despite the fact that your recent comments indicate that operations appear to be finished, there clearly is more work that needs to be done. As mentioned, today is indeed 60 days. So, Mr. Secretary, how many more months, just order of magnitude, do you think that you're going to need to be able to conclude operations successfully? And how many more billions of dollars do you think you're going to ask this body for?
Well, as you know, and as the president has stated, you would never tell your adversary, especially once you've
that is the line that you always.
Especially once you've
give me an order of
decimated their military and you control
3X,
their strait.
4X.
How long you would be committed to the mission?
And the next thing that you mentioned in your opening remarks, Mr. Secretary, is that you called on, which astounded me, examples of the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war, and the Vietnam war. Those are stunning examples to me of something that didn't go our way. We had the opportunity to execute on those wars quite well, but we didn't accomplish any mission, in my opinion, and I think you would agree on that as well.
My point is this effort is not those efforts.
That's exactly it. Is this war shaping up to be that war? Because it has every
We're shaping up to get the same kind of Democrats we got in those wars who were naysayers from the beginning, undermining the progress of troops.
Can we just have a conversation about the country and the nation and not about parties?
The Democrat Party wanted to socially engineer the Department of War. We've had to undo that and get it to a point where it's capable of projecting power. And
Clearly,
that's exactly
you're not able
what
to
we've
have
done.
that conversation.
And
So I will
President
move on, sir, and
it.
I'm going to reclaim my time. General George, let's talk about a guy who's a patriot, somebody who every single person here in this dais and down there in that audience and out there in this world has huge admiration for. Why did he get fired?
Well, as with any moves we make with general officers, first of all, I thank them for their service. And ultimately,
my impression is you thanked him via text or a phone call. You didn't even do it to his face.
Out of respect for these officers, we never talk about the nature of their removal, but every one of them, including myself, knows that they serve at the pleasure of the president. ultimately, out of respect to these officers, we don't reveal it. However, I will note, it's very difficult to change the culture of a department that was been destroyed by the wrong perspectives.
So you think General George destroyed a culture?
There are many. We've gotten rid of many general officers in this administration because we need new leadership.
You have no way of explaining why you fired one of the most decorated and remarkable men who's
we
ever
needed
served
new
the
leadership.
nation.
That's
and
my
so
answer.
your answer is a very immature way of responding to my request. My next question has to do with my remaining time about the fact that there apparently are orders that you've recently given to the Navy to detail officers to command billets in special operations where they, the people who you're detailing, have already received bad performance reviews. They've received negative fitness reports. Is there a truth to that statement, sir?
I'm not aware of what you're referring to.
Have you ever ordered the Navy to add officers who never screened for Special Operations Major Command to the promotion list for flag officer?
I'm not aware of what you're referring to.
All right, I'll take that for no. Thank you. I yield.
Generally yields back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, General Kane, Mr. Hegseth, and Hurst for being here today. I associate myself with the comments of Ranking Member Smith and Mr. Garamendi, so that I won't repeat a lot of what has been said. Mr. Hegseth, I recently realized that we have something in common. I'm also a fan of Pulp Fiction. And no, the movie is not an accurate portrayal of the Bible. You know what I'm talking about. This president and his administration have claimed to be the most transparent of all time. With that in mind, I'd love to get some straightforward answers today. Some estimates show that the Trump administration's war of choice in Iran is costing taxpayers around $1 billion every day. In addition to spending taxpayer money on a war they don't want, it is also driving up costs. The cost of gas, while the cost of living is skyrocketing under this administration's policies. To me, and I assume to the American people, it is unclear why we started this war, how it will end, and what anyone gained from it. Mr. Hegseth, about how much money has been spent on this war to date, and how much more do you anticipate spending?
Well, as our comptroller laid out, the estimate is less than $25 billion at this point as far as an expenditure. And the question I would ask this committee is, what is it worth to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, considering the radical ambitions of that regime? I mean, almost every member of this dais at some point has said, whether it was
thank you for your answer. I'll proceed to my next question. Thank you for your answer.
President Trump is the one that's willing to make sure it doesn't happen.
Supposedly, we had taken care of the nuclear capability last time around. And now this war, we're at it again, because obviously we said we did, but we did it.
In a way that
we know,
the United States military can do.
I want to reclaim my time. We know that the cost of oil and gas has gone up as a direct result of this war, and the American people are feeling that pain at the pump. In an attempt to alleviate the high price of gas caused directly by this president, he lifted sanctions on Russian oil. The way I see it, this is a massive gift to Putin and Russia's struggling economy. Mr. Hegseth, is there any concern that easing sanctions against Russia will allow Putin to continue funding Russia's illegal war against Ukraine?
Well, we've seen Russia's and Putin's inability to make effective battlefield gains, just like their inability to defend the Maduro regime with the billions of dollars of systems the Russians sent to Venezuela in order to defend him, which were defeated in 15 minutes. So Russia's military capabilities are no match for ours.
And you don't believe easing the sanctions is helping Russia?
Well, we have the best energy team in the planet at
it's just a yes or no.
White House, and we're going to ensure that
this is not deja vu. It's a simple yes or no.
I understand the energy dominance that this administration has unleashed.
All right, well, I'll proceed to my next question.
Strategy.
Last week, it was announced that the Department of Defense is no longer requiring service members to get their annual flu shot. Now, this is an easy one for you. It's a softball. Don't screw it up. The rationale was to, and I quote, restore freedom to our joint force. This has been a requirement since 1950 because it is an effective at preventing the spread of flu among our troops. It's not some new woke requirement, as you like to lean on for much of your rhetoric. This decision is actively making our military less safe and less prepared. Mr. Hegseth, At this time, are there plans to remove the mandatory requirement of other vaccinations like measles, mumps, and polio?
We made very clear in our announcement that it applies to service members having a choice as it pertains to the flu vaccine.
Don't you think that's a little reckless?
No, I think allowing well-informed Americans who serve our country to make a choice is not reckless. And commanders will still have latitude, say, for a submarine or something else to make a decision for a unit about whether it could be mandatory in a particular circumstance. But overall, our troops have earned the right to be able to choose about something like that related to their health.
Mr. Hegseth, I stand by what I said last time you were here. You were incompetent then, you're incompetent now, and you're the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to incompetence. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, now
other than that, I'm doing great.
Gentleman
Thank
from
you.
Mississippi.
Conspiracy theories, armed enemies. Secretary Hegseth, do you think American voters are enemies of the United States? A simple yes and no or suffice.
I think legal voters, I think everybody who's legal should vote, yes.
So American voters are not enemies of the United States? Yes. You're agreeing with me?
I think America's legal citizens should vote, yes.
How many armed enemies of the United States have attempted to interfere in the last election? Can you recall any time when armed enemies of the United States attempted to interfere in the last election or the 2020 election?
We just had the King of England here that a while ago, but
so 250 years ago. Okay, very good. All right. Well, Secretary Hegseth, if President Trump ordered you to deploy troops to polling places during the midterm elections this fall, which would violate the law I just cited, would you implement his order? Yes or no?
What you're trying to insinuate is that the president would give unlawful orders and we would somehow deploy troops as a result. And the evidence of our department is that we've worked alongside law enforcement very effectively for 15 months. Los Angeles would have been on fire for the summer had we not come across
I humbly disagree with that, but this is not a hypothetical situation that I'm inferring on. Your president in January of this year told the New York Times that he regretted not ordering the National Guard to seize voting machines in key states after the 2020 election. Last I heard from you, the last time we had any kind of armed enemies at any type of voting places was 250 years ago. We're talking 2020. So if the president, again, I'm asking you, orders you to break election law, violate the Constitution and the law, would you follow the orders of the president? Yes or no?
The president, you like to insinuate that the president issued
illegal orders. It's a simple question.
And does not.
Who would you follow, the president or the Constitution?
I will note that in 2024, troops were deployed. That was Joe Biden, by the way. Joe Biden were deployed to polling locations in 15 states. 2024, Joe Biden, troops deployed to polling locations in 15 states. Explain that one to me.
I am asking you a question now. You seem to really like Joe Biden. You've brought his name up more than many other topics today. Answer the question. Who are you beholden to, Mr. Secretary, the president or the Constitution?
Well, I'm
if you can't answer that question, because you couldn't answer that question when I asked you,
very proudly swear an oath to defend the Constitution
in Los Angeles. He couldn't answer that either. So I think our answer is very clear. Obviously, you have taken a oath of loyalty only to the president and not the people of this country. Let's move on now, and let's talk about AI. The Marvin Smart system, which appears to be the program on record being used in Iran, does the targeting work we know of about 2,000 people.
It's called the Maven system, not the Marvin system.
Excuse me. Thank you so much for that correction. It does it in a fraction of the time. The intention was to compress the kill chain, and the result was an attack that killed almost 200 children. Would you agree that tragic actions like this prove that when we trade time and humans for safety, people die?
The Maven system is a very effective tool, and inside that we have very prescriptive processes by which we ensure as much precision as humanly possible in very complex battlefield environments.
So you think we took every absolute effort to make sure that innocent civilians did not die in this attack?
I know that there is no country on planet Earth that takes more measures to ensure that civilian harm or civilian casualties are minimized than the United States of America and this War Department, and that is a fact.
Okay, and yet, Mr. Secretary, you eliminated the department's civilian harm reduction staff. You eliminated for a country that makes great efforts to make sure human casualties are reduced or eliminated. Don't you think that that goes actually counter to what you just said? Would these children not still be alive if you had not eliminated all of these staff working within CENTCOM?
We didn't eliminate them. We made sure that those things that they normally accomplish are at the field level, which they are. And all of these processes are in place at every level.
That something clearly has failed, whether it's our implementation of AI, whether it's understanding our human dependence on AI? Would you not agree something failed because almost 200 children died in Iran as a result of our bombing?
You're insinuating something where an investigation is not complete.
Gentley's time's expired. Chair now
recognizes Mr. Whitesides from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Secretary Hegseth, General Kane, Mr. Hurst, thank you for testifying today and for your service to the nation. Over the past few weeks, military and civilian leaders of many of the DoD components have testified about their FY27 posture. We appreciate their professionalism and their service to the country and the time that they've spent to testify before us. I want to start with Mr. Hurst. Mr. Hurst, you testified at the beginning of this that you said that the estimated cost of the war is about $25 billion. In March, you stated that the first week of the war cost $11 billion. So is it right to say that the following 7 weeks have cost about $14 million total, or $2 billion per week?
Yeah, the most intense phase of the conflict was obviously the beginning. That's when most munitions were used.
Okay.
And that's the basic expense from the war.
Right. So that you also said just now that the $25 billion includes the cost of the munitions deployed. Is that right? This question is for the CFO, sir. Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. So I guess I'm confused then. It makes sense that if that's the cost, then the cost to refill those stocks would be no more than $25 billion. Am I right about that?
When we estimate cost of the conflict, we're using current replacement cost for these weapon systems.
Right. You're using current replacement cost. So it's frankly pretty surprising that the estimate for the supplemental would be $200 billion. You don't, if you'd like to explain that, you can, but
that's not accurate. We don't have an estimate for the cost.
Okay, that's what's publicly reported. So it's good to hear that it's going to be less. Mr. Hurst, do you have Signal on your phone?
I'm sorry, why is this relevant?
Do you have Signal on your phone?
What does this have to do with the budget?
I'm going to take that as a yes. Mr. Kane, sorry, General Kane, do you have Signal on your phone?
I do, sir, yes.
Okay. So I want to talk about Signal. Last year, the Secretary and other administration officials discussed sensitive and almost certainly classified information about a strike in Yemen using the unclassified Signal app. Mr. Hurst, what's the current policy for Signal on official DoD devices?
I'm the comptroller. I don't do CIO work.
So therefore, it is allowed? Is that your statement, that it is now allowed to have Signal on your device?
Mr. Whiteside, my statement is I run the budget for DoD.
Yeah. Okay, well, he's got it on his phone, so therefore it must be permitted.
Sir, I got to go back and look if it's on my official phone. I was talking about my personal phone. I'm not exactly sure. I'll go back and look, though.
Okay. Last month, FBI Director Kash Patel made a public announcement that Russian hackers are targeting Signal app users in the government, specifically stated that they were targeting individuals of high intelligence value, including current and former U.S. government officials. I hope that it is not official policy that you can have Signal on your official phones, and I would love to get a response from the department on that. We have now asked this question about 5 separate times and have never gotten a straight answer. I want to close by talking about helicopters. Mr. Secretary, I want to ask about the Army Apache helicopter that flew over Kid Rock's property on March 28th. An investigation was launched by the 101st Combat Aviation Brigade Command Leadership, but before that review is completed on March 31st, you terminated it via social media post. Did you personally direct termination of that review?
I did.
Okay. Now, the president said they probably shouldn't have been doing it and that I'd take a look at it. So did you talk to the president before terminating that review?
Well, I don't relay what I talk about with the president.
I think unfortunately that means that you did talk to him, which in turn means that you've just confirmed that the president himself overruled the leadership of the 101st Airborne. Mr. Secretary, you yourself have affirmed repeatedly the need for higher standards and higher accountability at every level of your agency. Commanders rely on established processes to uphold these standards. How does canceling a command-initiated review by the 101st Airborne leadership support a culture of accountability? Actually, I think I'll ask that of the chairman.
Sir, back to my earlier comments about the importance in my role of staying in the middle. what you're alluding to is, in my assessment, with deep respect for your ask, is a partisan question, and I think it would be inappropriate for me to answer that.
Sir, I actually don't think it is. I think it is actually a very fundamental principle of accountability in our department, and I think it was the wrong decision. I'm going to close by just saying one thing. Mr. Secretary, you started this hearing by politicizing it, and I want to make one point. Poll after poll shows that the American public does not support this war, and support is dropping every day. We are all representing our constituents, which is our constitutional duty. And to state that we are politicizing it is an affront to Congress and every member in this House, and I yield back.
You are politicizing it, Congressman.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair now for you for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. Thank you, Secretary Hegseth, General Kane, Mr. Hurst, for being here today. After I was honorably discharged from the Army Reserve, the GI Bill helped me go to school and ultimately become a lawyer. My focus was representing clients who were wrongfully terminated or faced discrimination and harassment at the work. Mr. Secretary, if I were in the courtroom trying to prove that you discriminate against our military heroes, I wouldn't have to look very far or very hard. In just 16 months, you have fired more than a dozen senior military leaders. You've delayed or canceled the promotion of even more. Your chief of staff told the Secretary of the Army that President Trump would not want to stand.
That's not true. That was totally false reporting.
I'm not getting to my question yet, Mr. Secretary. Yeah, you told the president, the Secretary of the Army, that the president would not want to stand next to a black female officer at the military events. But, despite all of this, I remain very hopeful that you can and will do better for the men and women who have dedicated their lives to protect our great country. You're here to ask for $1.5 trillion. That's a huge budget, and I want to make sure that you have the ability to manage it. Secretary Hegseth, you would agree with me when I say that we want the most qualified people in every position of our military, correct? That's a question.
Yes.
Thank you. General Kane, you would want the same?
Yes.
Thank you. I share the bipartisan concern about the firing of General George. And what I and the American people want to know from you is, did you ask the president for his permission before you fired General George, Secretary Hegseth?
It is my responsibility to confer with the commander-in-chief on especially high-level personnel matters. And ultimately, I won't relay what was discussed, but he was aware of the action that would be taken.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And when you made the decision to fire General George, did you consult Secretary Driscoll?
There had been multiple consultations over a year, yes.
Do you and Secretary Driscoll have a good working relationship?
Yes, I appreciate the work he's doing for the Army.
And for the record, would you agree that Secretary Driscoll is doing a great job as the Secretary of the Army?
I appreciate the work that the Secretary is doing and made the personnel change based on the Chief of the Army.
In fact, he was so good that at his job that the president sent him to Ukraine to negotiate a peace deal. Do you know why the president chose to send him over you?
I'm grateful that the president puts in players at key moments to advance policy priorities, and that's what occurred there. And I was very supportive of it at the time.
Recently, Secretary Driscoll testified in front of the Appropriations Committee that he refused to strike the names of 2 female and 2 black officers from a promotion list due to their exemplary service, names which were ultimately removed. Did you order him to strike those names?
I know we removed those names. I did.
Okay. Why?
Because we review every general officer. You mentioned 12 general officers had been reviewed. The number's much higher than that. I would also note that under Barack Obama, 197 general officers were removed. So this is not something specific to this administration. Every officer serves at the pleasure of the president. And when they need to be removed in order to ensure we have the right leadership in those services, I will make those calls regardless of what you might say from the dais.
About a year ago, the Army began their transformation initiative. I'm all for modernization, but this process seems to have been completely rushed in a way that compromises our readiness, including deactivating a medical evacuation Black Hawk unit at Joint Training Forces Base, Los Alamitos. I've heard recently from senior Army officials who support slowing down the Army Transformation Initiative, specifically as it relates to aviation. Secretary Hegseth, can you commit to slowing down ATI as it relates to aviation?
There are multiple places inside ATI that we are reviewing to ensure that we do not create capability gaps inside today's Army based on the fights we have today and the fights of the future. And this budget reflects ensuring that we don't have any operational gaps in the Army or any of the services.
Mr. Secretary, during your opening, you brought up this beautiful slide, and you talked about the Arsenal of Freedom. It's an Arsenal of Freedom slide, talking about private investment, from the $1.5 billion. RTX was on there, Boeing, GE, L3 Harris, Lockheed. My question to you is, do you or your wife have any personal investment in those companies?
No.
Thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes